Two guys and AI in the Twilight Zone.
All right, don't forget to subscribe because you're going to need to, because this one's going to be on a little bit on the frightening side right here, right now.
Oh boy.
So, AI is explaining to people how to build bioterrorist recipes.
What was
and
that?
apparently accurately.
What was it, the Anarchist Cookbook, I think it
Yeah,
was. The
yeah.
first time was back in the 70s, I think, and everybody was like, well, now we could probably get step by step with a video. Maybe it's on YouTube. Who knows? This is a scary part as we start to see of little bits of AI's capabilities starting to seep out through the cracks. It's a sobering thought.
No, but here's what we're talking about. So apparently they asked AI about building a bioterrorism kind of thing, and it spit out accurate information to the point where a recipe you could follow, essentially. I guess that's the best way to put it. So again, a lot of this stuff is knowledge that's out there, but it's kind of kept secret most of the time. But apparently the AI was able to piece all the components together, and it does raise a question. How are humans in a national security agency supposed to keep us safe if we got the machines we're programming explaining this to the point where, you got people with doctorates who know this stuff literally terrified by what they're reading because they can't believe how easy this was to get.
Well, I think one of the other things is that we're going through an exponential increase in the capabilities of what AI can do, and that includes its ability to research. And it doesn't necessarily know that some things they aren't supposed to talk about. While censorship may be applicable in terms of the sexual standpoint, because that's real easy. But what about information that it finds as it stumbles around the cloud and says, "Oh wow, look at this! We can make an atomic device here," and then starts to hand that information out.
And by the way, here's how you want to enrich your uranium.
There you go. So there are capabilities that are happening every day. I think that's really where one of the biggest challenges are, and where I think it's getting ahead of us is that AI now, and we've discussed this before, is generating a lot of its own code as it's increasing its capacity, and it's not necessarily being done with oversight.
Well, I think here's my problem. There's no accountability. Where is the accountability aspect of this? Because the answer is, computer glitch, we'll put a software patch in.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not really accountability. If I posted that to the web, there would be agents at my house, and rightfully so. I'm not arguing against that. I mean, I would be considered a threat. But this is more like, things happen. We'll get it out there. And you got basically a chatbot that's telling you how to synthesize deadly virus or something of this nature.
The accuracy component of it is what is probably most disturbing, and I think that's probably when we looked at the doctors and scientists that said, "Whoa, wait a minute, this is remarkably close," and just general data that may be out there. I don't think that the actual keys to nuclear fission are out there wandering around. But I think that the danger here is, and this is where AI being unchecked becomes problematic, is that we don't really know for sure how it is setting itself up to be able to get access to things, which heretofore we wouldn't have even thought about. Who would have ever thought about a computer being actually to snoop around in top secret documents and be able to come out with the information and then go spill the beans?
Well, and I think about all the quantum computing stuff coming, and the ability to even keep the computer out of it, something that's computerized, seems like it's going to become more and more impossible. So AI is going to have access to and again, a lot of times we're safe on these things because for a human to do this, it might take them a lifetime to do that much research. It might take them to get into different systems, to pull off this little bit of information here, this little bit of information here, the amount of brain power and just ability to read and synthesize that much probably made us safe in essence. It's probably always been out there, but we couldn't. But this thing can do it in a matter of minutes, hours. Well, I mean,
Well, aren't we actually seeing how the oligarchy that's been tied fast within the whole .com industry, how they became so powerful? I mean, you take, for instance, even with the creation of vaccines, I think it was stated that when they were developing the COVID vaccine, the creators said that they were able to do trials that would have taken years in just a short period of time because the calculations and the probabilities could all be done. Whether the validity of that had any merit or not, but nonetheless, the abilities here, not just from a standpoint of, oh yeah, I can find this stuff online, but having the computing capabilities really just at your fingertips. And we're only just, touching the edge of it. I mean, if there's anyone who's sophisticated in being able to get access to this stuff, it's kind of scary in terms of what the capabilities are, from a quantum computing thing, as you talk about, what they're able to achieve and come to conclusions of hypotheses that could actually be valid, even if they weren't necessarily stolen from top secret sources in other cases. Just the ability for them to be able to repeat perhaps what Einstein did over 10 years in the matter of a couple hours.
yeah, and I think, and I keep going back to this. My major issue with all this is when it comes. Think about like in real time. You were talking about scientists were involved. Even if we think back to the Manhattan Project,
Right.
All right, and some of them later regretted what they worked on,
Mm-hmm.
but at least they were mature. They had age. They had life experience. The idea of, do we share this with the world? Do we keep it top secret? That was made by generals, senior politicians, people who had life experiences.
Yep.
Right now, and when you're talking about the AI world, this stuff is being kind of, the safety protocols are being done by really young people without any life experience, without really experience in the intelligence communities, and we're turning over safety of the human race to 19-year-old coders in California.
Well, let's take it one step further. Are the determinations and the calculations actually being achieved by a non-human entity? In which case, it doesn't even matter if they're 19.
Well, I mean, here's the claim. Oh, we're going to put a patch in, or we're going to put up these guardrails.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be done by a human being, whether those hold or not.
Well, obviously they didn't, and most likely, any patch is doomed to come apart again. But I think going back to we're two guys against AI. Why? And because of what the possibilities are and how it can be used by parties that are not necessarily looking at the best interests of humanity as a whole, or they have profit motive or whatever the case may be. It's not just a case of biological weapons or nuclear weapons. It's the way that AI technology can be used in ways that may not have been originally intended. And one of the things that humans are best at is being able to adapt things and taking them away from their original purpose. What we're looking at here when this particular situation in the article, where an individual was able to access significant material in terms of being able to almost create a weapon of mass destruction, that's just one example. The abilities for market manipulation, for instance, the ability for ways to goof up a society. We live in a very fragile world, and that information that's there, and in anyone who's, I should say, digitally aware, for lack of a better word,
it's too late. But I mean, here's the question that wasn't asked at the beginning: why does it have to have all human knowledge? I mean, wasn't it enough for Siri to tell me what equipment to buy for my kitchen, how to set it up properly to make chicken cacciatore?
Well, yeah.
Do I need to really go to bioweapons of mass destruction? Like, why is that even allowed in?
Well, here's the thing. I think that the AI et al. Was used in the creation of a lot of these processes. So it's already in there. It's not a case of like it's hidden in some book somewhere. They were involved. Computers were used in the process in the ways to determine things. I mean, we talked in one of the other segments about the fact that it's willing to rewrite everything for us now. And so
it's just too fast.
You take the emails.
How can this be a good idea when it's this fast?
Okay, it's top secret. But does Gemini's going to take and do a summary for you of whatever the message was that came to you? Now, admittedly, your messages and my messages don't affect national security, but is the process the same? And does that mean that there's actually an inanimate eye on all communications, that they are getting insights into things that we may have thought were secret, but then now we find,
that's my guess. It wasn't as secret as we thought it was.
Well, exactly, and nobody specifically told it. Don't say anything about it.
Now, here's where I am though. Now, see, I still think we're still at the beginning stages. So I think to get to this level, you have to be able to ask the right questions in your prompts. And I think that's a little bit of what's left out of here. But that's going to change. You're going to be able to be a knucklehead asking a basic question, and it's going to spit out way more than you were capable of handling, if you understand what I mean. But right now, I think you would have to prompt this thing enough times to get to this end result. You would have to have some basis of knowledge. Not that a bad actor and a foreign adversary wouldn't have that, but you would need that. Whereas I don't know in the future if you're going to need that level of sophistication to get to a level of sophistication of an answer like this.
And we're coming into it, and I'm libertarian by nature, and I'm not a big fan of the legislative process just because I've seen how it's become corrupted. But regulation is one of the areas where we're looking at, in an effort to be in the lead on the digital arms race, for lack of a better way, of putting it. We're throwing a lot of potential regulatory opportunities aside because we want to be on top. And
it's hard not to, because you don't want your adversary to be on top.
The problem with this is that we're opening up Pandora's box here, and that's going to be where is the balance, between stifling growth and responsible growth. And we watched this happen, and unfortunately, a great example is we were going on a green agenda until it was decided by the oligarchs that they would like to have data centers that suck more power than a small city, and then now all of a sudden, what, we were wrong. Those assumptions were wrong.
Well, I guess the idea is AI will solve our climate issues.
I guess. Well, it's not going to matter because they're just going to eliminate us anyway. Maybe that's the end game.
That will solve the climate problem.
That's true.
According to Malthus.
But as we move forward, and I don't have answers here. I worked in the legislature. I saw that process. I guess you could call myself a legislative consultant to a degree. And so where is that balance when you realize that every law that you pass affects 10, 12 million people on a state level, maybe 100 million people, nationally, many, many more. How do you end up with that one thing to where you still can have both?
Let me ask this it's crazy kind of question. So it might take me a while to get there in an explanation, but all right. So we determine, let's go back to your legislation. We determine that this is now available to people.
Yep.
And our neighbor's a little bit goofy, and we don't want to give him the recipe to poison the local water supply. So we create guardrails of entry into using this stuff. I mean, that ultimately would be where we'd have to go, right?
Right.
Well, that's going to create a have and have not at a whole different level. I have access to AI, you don't. Or I can afford it, you can't. Like, do you see where I'm going with this?
Well, first of all, there is no such thing as a classless society. We can say that we're aiming towards.
No, but anybody can go on the internet right now and get on an AI system.
Well,
I mean,
sure.
some of us have subscriptions to different programs that keep us more robust.
Right.
So it's already begun.
Right. Right.
But everybody has a kind of access.
To a degree.
Should everybody have access? But how would you regulate?
Well, I think that's where the censoring component is. And the censoring, for instance, is somewhat.
Do we want the mentally deranged to have access to this kind of information?
Well, it's interesting, and I forget which country it was, but they're making it where you can't have social media if you're under 16.
Yeah, I've seen a number of places. Yeah. I believe that started in Europe, Australia, somewhere like that.
So
And you listen, we don't allow children to have access to a lot of things that are bad for them. Cigarettes,
right?
In New Jersey, marijuana, alcohol, the keys to the car. So I'm not. Even my libertarian thing says, well, that's that might be a good thing.
Well, and where's the balance between safety and innovation? And of course, if we eliminate excellence, then I guess it doesn't matter if we go for mediocrity. But there's a lot of people discussing the fact that the new cars, when they come out in 27, are going to have cameras that determine whether or not you're fit to drive, and whether or not your eyes are still focused on the road. Whether or not this is actually going to come to fruition, who knows? You could see both sides. Oh, wow, it's going to be a safety item. Okay, but so then where's the delineation here? Like if I
well, once again, it's an intrusion to me on free will.
Exactly, we're surrendering agency.
Yes.
So at that point,
but you know what's funny? You just know who always gives up the free will? It's always the guy that wasn't going to misuse it in the first place.
That's true. And at the end of the day, you put the regulations in, and the guy who was going to break the law, still does it.
They don't care.
There was just a shooting in California. California has more doggone gun laws than you can shake a stick at. Yet these things still happen. So they just go like this towards the law. But when we're looking at something such as AI, that also has the ability to self-police, I don't know that it's necessarily unreasonable to have those types of controls built in. We talked about the challenges that we may have in the future with air traffic and drones, for instance. Is it unreasonable to make it where drones should have some kind of way to make sure that they don't crash into each other? I don't know.
Or the plane I'm in.
Or the plane you're in. So there are reasonable limits that you could put there. I mean, there should be something that if someone is taking and looking for, information on, weapons of mass destruction, that, a little red light should go off, because for sure, it has no problem, picking up what it feels is inappropriate content, socially unacceptable, something, whether, it's, racially based or religious based, anti-Semitic, there's red flags that can pop off that, immediately would draw attention to it, which, brings us to a whole big brother world that, scares the living daylights out of me. But the problem is that this kind of stuff is already out there.
Well, yeah. And here's kind of the thing. It's easy to set up guardrails for things you expect.
Right.
It's harder for these surprises.
Oh, that's where the dynamic is so
I mean, and I think back, the one that always fascinated me was 9/11.
Right.
Well, who could have ever thought this would happen? Well, I saw a ton of Hollywood movies that projected that way, and there was an attack on that same building just like 8 years before that. So probably a lot of people, including the ones who did it. So it's almost as if you got to, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where we go.
Protect against the unexpected gets very difficult. However, I think also,
well, I expect people to ask for crazy stuff. I don't know.
There's algorithmic capabilities there to take certain things and say, well, access denied.
I would think so.
You would think, and maybe this article was a wake-up call that we need to do that. And
I'm going to go back to what I always say, and then we'll end on this. How can there be nothing like a government oversight board on this? And I don't mean to shut it down. I mean to say there should be this group of really intelligent people brought together and say, here's things that could happen. But, there just needs to be that National Transportation Safety Board version of something for this. There just does.
Well, here's where the problem lies. Our legislative process in this country is greatly influenced by campaign donations. If we don't change that, and I see agendas regularly that appear as national priorities that shouldn't be, because large amounts of money were donated to lots of members of Congress to sway an opinion. How has it that we have not put a stop to this? That it's ridiculous, because if we're looking at the Silicon Valley has become one of the major sources of donations for political people, and they are beholden to them moving forward. Is it any surprise that we see a legislative environment that favors them and not the general people? That welfare question alone, which brings us right back to it. I mean, you want to talk about, oh yeah, we're in a democracy, which we talked about in another one, which does not appear in the Constitution. But hey, you know what? Let's say that. Then stop making it to where an exclusive group of people can buy and pay for our legislators.
Yeah, what a good friend of ours calls the corporatists.
There you go.
We'll see you in the next episode.
Take care.